the Buddha's one skill for the moment of death. We have that contrast in our chants, again and again. We chant about being subject to aging, illness, death, and separation, and then there's a chant of goodwill starting. May I be happy, may all beings be happy. The two chants define the Buddha's picture of what our practice is about. We have the reality of aging, illness, and death, and we have the wish for happiness. It was that wish that motivated the young prince back 2,600 years ago to find some way of not suffering from aging, illness, and death. You can't deny them as facts. They happen again and again and again. But his question was, is there a way to experience them and not suffer? And even better, is there a way not to have to experience them at all? That was what he found. This is why we take refuge in him. It's on occasions like this, when there's been a death, that you begin to realize how precious that refuge is. After all, death can be startling. It happens in a moment. Even when there's been a long build-up, a long illness, there's a moment when the person is alive, and then the next moment they're gone. Even more so in a case like Shotai's, when nobody expected it. She didn't give any hint of any premonition. Her physical symptoms were there. She admitted that she had some vertigo, but you don't die of vertigo. Then she's gone. Of course, that makes us reflect on how quickly it could happen to us too. That's a lot of what's scary about death. You live your life, you have your plans, you have your expectations, you have a sense of security, however secure or insecure it may seem. But there's that basic sense, I'll just keep on living and making plans. Then it stops. It can stop at any time, so we've got to be prepared. This is one of the ways in which we take refuge in the Buddha. He teaches us how to train our minds, so when death comes, we'll be better prepared to handle it. The death of other people and our own. There's a custom in Thailand where they divide rituals into two types, auspicious and inauspicious. The inauspicious ones have to do with funerals and death, making merit for people who've passed away. But the concept that these are inauspicious is not a Buddhist concept. It's Brahmanical. From the Buddha's point of view, when you see someone who's passed away, the proper response is heedfulness. 1. Being heedful in how you react to that person's death, not letting it shake you up so much that you start doubting in the goodness of life, the opportunities offered by life. And 2, so that you can also handle the thought of your own death and prepare for it. That kind of heedfulness is actually auspicious. You can prepare for death in 2 ways. By doing good in terms of generosity, virtue, meditation, creating opportunities for good places to go, and also by working on the skills you're going to need at the moment of death. Just sitting here meditating as you want to stay with the breath. Other thoughts come up that can wander away and lure you to wander away. You have to say, no. You have to learn how to say, no, effectively. This is for the sake of your concentration right now, and you're going to need concentration at that moment too. As the Buddha said, our rebirth is determined by our cravings. If we can crave a life where we can practice the Dhamma, that's a good craving to have. But if you allow vagrant thoughts to come wandering in and pull your cravings away, who knows where you're going to go? It's like a tornado, coming and sucking you up and depositing you someplace else that you didn't expect or didn't want. So this is another part of refuge. The Buddha teaches us these skills that we're going to need to resist the pull of vagrant cravings. The reflection on death is not simply, you're going to die someday and it could happen at any time, because after all, You could react to that reflection in all kinds of ways, many of which are unskillful. The skillful way is to realize that the shape of your mind is going to determine where you're going to go. So you'd better get your mind in good shape. Develop these skills of mindfulness, alertness, ardency, so that when the unexpected happens, when that moment comes, you'll be prepared. You'll know what to do. As the Buddha said, our reaction to things that make us suffer tends to be bewilderment. And when we're bewildered, we're unprotected. We don't know what to do. So this is the Buddha's gift, having a strong sense of what should be done and how to do it. This way, if death comes at any unexpected sudden moment, you don't have to fret about how the narrative of your life hasn't reached a proper closure. Just remind yourself, I've got the skills I need. This wasn't expected in the narrative arc, but I can pull out those skills and do something good with them. So the Buddha's advice is to 1. End your bewilderment, and 2. Give an answer to what can be done so as not to suffer. We learn that it's important that we act in ways that are for our own well-being and for the well-being of others. This is where the practice of dedicating merit comes in. We do good, and then we dedicate the merit to those who have passed away. There's a passage in the canon where a Brahmin comes and asks the Buddha about the merit that he's made for his ancestors. Do they actually receive it? The Buddha replies, if they're in a position where they can receive it, then yes. The Buddha lists the realm of the hungry ghosts as the position where dedicated merit can be received. But there's a tradition throughout the forest tradition that it's not just hungry ghosts who benefit. Anyone who has a way of knowing that merit has been done and dedicated to them, if they rejoice in that, they appreciate it, then that becomes their merit too. When there's a sense of being lost and bereft when someone dies, especially when someone dies suddenly like this, you've got to remind yourself, you've got the Buddha as a refuge. You don't just crawl up in his lap and hide out there, but you do have him as a refuge in the sense of giving you knowledge of what can be done so you don't have to suffer, and what can be done so you don't have to be plagued with thoughts of how meaningless everything is. As a John Lee once said, the noble ones see that dying is simply like changing one set of clothes for another. Death doesn't make meaningless the good that you've done. It simply means that it can get carried on in a new role. This is why taking rebirth as a working hypothesis is an important part of the training. As the Buddha said, the things he had learned in the course of his awakening were like the leaves in a forest. What he taught was just a handful of leaves. So when he talks about the 3 knowledges he gained on the night of his awakening, apparently that wasn't all he learned in the course of his awakening. Remember, he continued contemplating and enjoying release for 7 more weeks afterwards. I don't really know what else he learned in the course of that time, but he made sure to mention that his knowledge of rebirth and his knowledge of why and how people are reborn was part of that handful of leaves. So it wasn't just an idea he picked up from his culture. There were people in his time who did believe in rebirth, but there were also people who didn't. Even among those who did believe in rebirth, there were lots who didn't believe that your actions had anything to do with it. They thought what you were was permanently determined. In other words, if you were a Brahmin, you were going to be reborn as a Brahmin no matter what you did. If you were a dog, you were going to be reborn as a dog no matter what you did. Some of those who said you went up and down said it happened in a totally random way. So then the Buddha pointed out his understanding of rebirth. He was actually making an important statement that this is a necessary way of viewing things so as to end your bewilderment and to keep you protected. This is what refuge is all about. It gives protection. It protects us from our bewilderment. It protects us from complacency. It protects us from all the wrong ideas and wrong actions we can do out of fear of aging, illness, death, out of fear of loss and separation. I noticed in Thailand that the Ajahns, who'd been in the forest and had confronted lots and lots of dangers there, were the ones who seemed to be most convinced and have the strongest sense that the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha really do offer a refuge. It's when you confront the facts of life like this, that's when you realize how precious this refuge is. Mindfulness of death. Mindfulness of death is an interesting meditation in that it very rarely functions on its own. It piggybacks on other topics. There's one passage where the Buddha says that if you really want to be heedful, you remind yourself each time you breathe in, each time you breathe out. May I live for this one more breath, I could accomplish a lot. In other words, mindfulness of death focuses you on the breath and what you can do with the breath. If you simply think with each breath, I could do a lot, I could do a lot, you don't get much done. You have to ask yourself, well, what needs to be done? Look at the breath as bodily fabrication, the way you talk to yourself as verbal fabrication, and the perceptions and feelings you focus on as mental fabrication. What needs to be worked on in those three things? What insight can you gain into the process of fabrication as you work with them? That's the work that needs to be done. So, mindfulness of death is a guardian meditation in the sense that it focuses our attention right here, right now, and it encourages us to do the work that needs to be done right here, right now. It's interesting that in modern Buddhism, the present moment is seen as an end in itself. We practice to get into the present moment, then to stay there. But from the Buddha's point of view, we get into the present moment because there's work to be done there that will have an impact on how we face death. So instead of being a topic to avoid thinking about death, staying right here in the present moment is important because it allows us to master the skills we're going to need at the point when death comes. This is how it's a guardian meditation. In fact, the other guardian meditations also benefit from mindfulness of death because, as the Buddha said, there are 4 things that we fear as we approach death, and the guardian meditations help us with those. We fear losing the sensual pleasures we've had in this life. We fear losing the body. We're afraid that if we've done unskillful things in the past, there may be punishment waiting for us on the other side. And then finally, we just really don't know what's going to happen if we haven't seen the true Dhamma. If we haven't gained the Dhamma eye, there are going to be doubts about the true Dhamma, and those doubts can really cause fear. What's going to happen? Is there nothing at all after death? Is there rebirth? What kind of rebirth is it, and how is it going to happen? Those are legitimate fears, and the different guardian meditations help us with them. The fear of missing out on sensuality and fear of losing the body. If you've had some experience dealing with the contemplation of the body, it helps to overcome some of those fears. You realize that what you've got here in the body is not all that much. There's a lot of pain and a lot of trouble that comes with a body. You think of each part of the body, and there's a series of diseases that goes along with each. So if you can overcome your attachment to the body through that contemplation, it makes you a lot less afraid of leaving it when the time comes. Otherwise, you'll hover around after you die, like that spirit the woman saw in the envelopes behind Wat Makut. Envelopes in Thailand are little structures that are just a bit larger than a coffin. You stick a coffin in, and you seal it up with plaster. They use these in Thailand because often when somebody dies, the family's not ready to hold the funeral quite yet. Maybe somebody's away, or they don't have the money yet. So they keep the body in what they call an envelope, wait until they're ready, and then they take it out to complete the funeral. There was a whole field of these envelopes behind the building in Wat Makut where Ajahn Fuang taught meditation. One night, one of his students was sitting and meditating with him, and she had a vision where people were performing a ceremony in which a coffin was being placed in an envelope. There was a man standing right next to the envelope, wearing a suit. After the ceremony was over, everybody left except for him. He looked left and right, and then went zoop into the envelope. It startled her, so without saying anything to anyone, she left the meditation room, went down to where the ceremony had just happened, and asked some of the people who were leaving, "The person who died, did he look like this?" And she described the man in the suit. They said, "Yup, that's the man." So she went back to Ajahn Fuang and asked him, "What do I do now?" He said, "Well, try to get back into concentration and see if you can get that vision again." And she did. He said, "Okay, now look inside the envelope." She saw the spirit perched there, hovering right next to its body, not knowing where to go. Ajahn Fuang said, "Now dedicate the merit of your meditation to him." So she did. She said it was like a light going out of her chest, like a headlamp. The spirit looked at her. There was this flash in his eyes, and he left. Sometimes Ajahn Fuang would walk around Wat Makut in the evening. They had a lot of funerals there, and they had little pavilions where the funerals would be held. He called them body shops. He came back one evening after walking around and said, "You know, the number of people who die and hang around their bodies is awfully large. It's because people are so attached to their bodies that they can't conceive of being any place else but around the body. Well, a corpse is not something you want to hang around, so it's good to see there's nothing here that's really worth hanging on to. The more you contemplate the body, the more the contemplation can pry you away from your attachment to the body, and you're not so afraid of leaving it. As for fear of things that you've done in the past that you might be punished for, the Buddha said the best way to deal with that kind of fear is 1. To remember that just because you've done something bad in the past doesn't mean you have to go to a bad place after you die. Have a change of heart. Maintain right view. That can protect you. A part of right view is recognizing, okay, that was a mistake that you made, and you can't go back and change what you did, but you can resolve not to repeat that mistake. That's more right view. Then develop goodwill for everybody, the person you wronged, yourself, and all people everywhere. As you maintain that attitude of goodwill, that too is a protection. It helps to overcome some of the fears of what you've done in the past. As for the fear that comes from not having seen the true Dhamma, the only way you're going to totally overcome that fear, of course, is to have your first taste of the deathless stream entry. But in the meantime, you can develop strong conviction in the Buddha's awakening. Think about what he learned about rebirth, because what he learned about rebirth in his course of awakening is an important lesson in how to prepare for death. After all, knowing that you're going to die and thinking about the fact it could come at any time, if you don't also think about what actually happens at death, you can come up with all kinds of wrong ways of reacting to that news. Either fear, or you might decide, well, what the hell, life is short, enjoy it as much as you can, and you go out and do all kinds of unskillful things. But as the Buddha pointed out, we're reborn in line with our karma, and we're reborn in line with our cravings at the moment of death. It's not just what you did in this particular life or in previous lives. It's also the state of your mind when you die. He compares it to a fire leaving one house and going to another one. It's carried along by the wind. In the physics of that time, they believed that fire actually latched on to the wind, clung to the wind. And in this case, he says, you cling to your craving. You might think, that's pretty good. I can go where I want to go. But the nature of craving is that it's pretty blind. And if the mind is out of control, which easily happens if you're in pain or drugged with painkillers, all kinds of weird cravings can come up at the moment of death and blow you off course. You can think about it. You're leaving this realm, you're leaving this body, you're being evicted, and there's a lot of pain that goes along with death. So a lot of times, people either go for sensual craving, as they see that that's the only way to avoid focusing on pain, or they're simply afraid that they'll go out of existence, so they latch onto any kind of existence that occurs to them. Or they may decide that life is so much suffering they'd rather be just snuffed out. Well, that takes you to another state of being as well. Then, all the hindrances can come in at that time. There can be doubt. There can be restlessness and anxiety. There can be drowsiness. Ill will can come up as you remember people who have wronged you in the past, along with sensual desire, and they can take over. You've seen this in your own mind as you meditate. You're sitting here, all the circumstances around you are fine, everything's quiet, your body's not doing anything outrageous in terms of creating pain or illness. The circumstances are ideal, and even then, the hindrances can take over. So what's going to happen when the body is falling apart and your life is ending? If you can't control the mind and keep it away from the hindrances now, how are you going to keep it away then? When you reflect on this gives you a good idea of how you should prepare. You've really got to work on overcoming the hindrances. You can use those guardian meditations to help overcome your fears. You can work on the breath because, as I said, the way the Buddha teaches the breath as a topic of meditation, he focuses on fabrication, bodily, verbal, mental. These are the things that are going to shape your cravings. These are the things that are going to shape your state of mind. So when you get really skilled at handling these things, seeing them clearly and noticing how you can develop skillful fabrications and how you can let go of unskillful ones, how you get really skilled to get beyond fabrication entirely, you can make a difference in where you go. But you're not going to get beyond fabrication unless you really understand how to do it well. When you've mastered these things, that's when you're ready. That's when you're prepared, and you can have some confidence that you'll know what to do and that you'll do it well. So mindfulness of death isn't just thinking, die, 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 I'm going to die. Sometimes those thoughts are useful when you find yourself sitting here meditating and thinking about the pleasures you're missing right now. You can remind yourself, well, I could die at any moment. This is not a good time to be thinking about those things. And the fact that I'm going to die means, how much are those things really worth? Then you reflect, what do I have to do? I have to get ready. After all, it's not just that when you die, events take over. I mean, it happens for a lot of people. They just allow events to take over. But you can't trust events to take you to a good place. You've got to strengthen your mind, strengthen your intentions, strengthen your understanding of what's happening in the mind, so that when you're face to face with difficult issues as you're leaving the body, you'll be prepared. Ajahn Mahabua gave a series of talks one time to a woman who was dying of cancer. After she died, the talks were transcribed, published in a big volume, and it was called the Dhamma for getting prepared. When you think about it, that's what all the Buddha's teachings are all about, getting prepared. When he left home, it was because he was trying to look for something that didn't age, didn't grow ill, didn't die. And what he taught us how not to suffer from these things as we go through them, and how we can discover something that takes us beyond aging, illness, and death entirely. This is where everything is focused, which is why mindfulness of death gathers into it all kinds of meditation topics. You can trace every meditation topic, every skill about the things you need to abandon, to mindfulness of death. That's how they're all connected, and that's why mindfulness of death is a good meditation topic for encouraging you to get really good at the other topics, because they'll play an important role when the time comes to go.